This podcast is brought to you by the Prospect Research Institute, where researchers come to learn, innovate, and connect.
But what we did is we did a side-by-side analysis, as I said, and we said, hey, here's what we have. Would you like to change it up? And our president was all gung-ho for it. So that was great.
Welcome to Prospect Research Chat Bites, a podcast by and for prospect research professionals. I'm Jennifer Filla. Today, I'm talking with Michele Tanzosch, Assistant Director of Operations for Prospect Research at Grinnell College. Hello, Michele. Thank you for joining me today on Chat Bites.
Thank you, Jen. I really appreciate being here.
Before we jump into profiles and databases, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share how you found yourself in the nonprofit world, but especially, how did you wind up in prospect research?
Well, I would say that I am a non-traditional prospect researcher in the essence that prospect research was never in my bailiwick. I didn't even know about it until I fell into it. And to give a little bit of insight, my prior background is I was a director of training and development for a staffing firm, Salesforce, for about 9 years. And then after a while, I decided I wanted to live my dream, move to the big city of Chicago and did that, and wanted to change and get into more of a creative role and pursued a job in an interior design firm as a project manager. They so kindly took me under their wings, taught me prospect management, taught me the details, which I believe I utilize definitely in my role here, and how to manage a project and how to manage different areas that happen that you don't even know that happened in the background, kind of a thing. That was great, and I was doing well. And then I met my fiance, or who was soon to be my fiance, and then moved to Grinnell, Iowa. There, I eventually landed with Grinnell College in their alumni and donor relations department as an assistant. I was their power user for the database for a team of 14 people. And then from there, they did a lot of events. So they were the event people. They did things throughout the United States, in some regional, in some different markets overseas, but mostly in the United States. And I did that, starting that job knowing nothing about alumni relations or about fundraising at the time, other than what I had researched for the interview. So I did the research, found I really loved the team and I liked the work, and they offered the job. And I was so grateful that I grabbed onto that one and said, yes, it sounds great. What eventually landed me in prospect research is that it was actually a job that my boss at the time had given me and said, can you go research this alum? And that just like opened up 10,000 rabbit holes for me. And I went down every one of them, I have to admit. But it did pique my interest to the point where I chatted with the prospect researcher at the time and learned a little bit more about her role. She was so excited to let me know, like, oh, it's so exciting that you're doing research. Let me tell you everything, kind of a data dump. And it was awesome because she's an awesome person. She moved on into an internal role here, and that her job opened up, and I went, hey, why not? So I went for it, and here I am.
That's a great story. That's so
Thank
nice
you.
that you got to be mentored that way.
Yes, it was great. And she's here to always be like a backup to say, hey, I don't recall how to do this. And if she doesn't know it, she's a great person to say, hey, remember so-and-so at that institute, go call them, and so she's a good person to still have in my back pocket.
Wonderful. What does working at Grinnell College look like? I'm thinking, what's the size of your department? What kind of database are you using? Those kinds of things.
Our organization consists of about 40 people within the department, from the VP on down. We have 4 different teams. I work in operations. We also have alumni and donor relations, annual giving, and development. And that's where the major gift officers are housed. Operations is housed in its own team, but we work across all the teams. Each one of us works within different avenues at different times, or for different projects. For example, we all consist of data records, web specialists, the financial person who answers the gifts. We have system support, the database administrator, and then my cohort is the macro data analytics person who does the big stuff. And we always say I'm the micro person that looks at everything on an individual level. So that is us. And that's how our department is structured at this time.
Okay, so that sets the stage because you were kind enough to post in the Institute's Learning Community forums about, well, it was on the topic of paper profiles versus snippets in the database. And you talked about how at Grinnell you have a hybrid option for database versus paper. Can you share a little bit about how that happened and what you're doing?
Being in operations, we like to have the motto, if it's not in the database, it didn't happen. So we utilize our database, which we use Razor's Edge at this point. I work in database view. We also have NXT view, but I work primarily out of database view. And what happened is if it doesn't live in the database, it didn't happen. We have a lot of data that we stick in there. So our operations team puts in a lot of data, of course, on the volunteer. Anything that we get from campus when they were students, they transfer some data into it as well to know what type of sports they were in or anything like that for affinity groups. We do a lot of contact details, education, employment details like everybody else does, and solicitor roles, what volunteer roles they've had, funds they give to, giving details, all the nuts and bolts. But what happened is we had a series of different transitions over the years and prior to me, where it was the Word document and it was all on there and it was pages and pages long. And then a new vice president came in and said, this is too much. I just want the nuts and bolts. And so it was changed to the nut and bolts of just the basics. Another VP or two came along and then they wanted a little bit more data. And of course, more data means not only more data from research, but more data from the gift officers, where they were writing meeting objectives and doing extra bullet point pages to give a little bit more data on the constituents. And so it kind of progressed over where we are at the moment, where we house as much as we can in the database. For example, with profiles, I put in something what's called profile notes, which is an action Razor's Edge that I detail a lot more details that we don't have housed anywhere else in the system. And they have headers, so it's always in the same kind of a format. And if there's nothing for the header doesn't go in, sort of a thing. So it's kept tight. We have that in there. Recently, within the past, I would say year, our new president asked for a quick brief to be put into the profile at the very top, which is a 1 to 3 sentence structure of what they do with what company and what does the company do, and also a little bit more about what they do with that company. So it's not just like CEO at Albright organization that does blah blah and they do this. So they have a quick brief as to say when they look at the profile to know what's the nut and bolts of what they do currently. And that's great that it has a lot of details. And that's where we are now. But we are an approach where we did recently do a review of what's being done because we have 3 documents. But a lot of the documents are overlapping and there's details that are getting done by 2 people and it just seems to be a little cumbersome. So we did do a side-by-side analysis of it and determined, okay, how much time is being wasted on same data and what sometimes it's okay. Sometimes we do have to take a step back and go, okay, if it's here, maybe it shouldn't be there. So we did that approach and we did approach the president of our organization and say, hey, what do you want? Like, what do you look for? Like, what do you think? Oh, I want this on the very top. This is on the second page. I want this over here in the right column because that's where my eye naturally goes to. She gave some details that we never considered, like what's the care of approach? What's the personality like of the person? So we've changed it up a little bit. We're at the standpoint where we're going to be pursuing and doing a little bit more of where the Word document, the bullet points that we have are going to then be taken and put and embedded in a Razor's Edge action because that stuff doesn't change. It's about their family. It's about their education. It's about data points and more of a flowing verbiage from the gift officer on who they are. That doesn't change each time, but there always are, oh, I have to change this little bit of nugget. And so why are we doing this? Why don't we just have it in there for perpetuity's sake and we never have to worry about it. If they leave, it's not lost, kind of a thing. So we're going to stick that in there. What we're going to move out going in future is the meeting objectives and the profile note. And so that way it's more tidy and we have that to be able to deliver to the president's office and her senior leadership. One good thing about the senior leadership and the new president we have, they're very forward facing with donors. They want to meet with people. And so we're trying to make everyone's job just a little bit easier of being able to find it and do it.
That's great. And I'm really interested in how you're using the Razor's Edge actions. Is that giving you more flexibility when you go to pull a profile out as a report?
Yes, we do have our Razor's Edge actions set up where certain data that shouldn't be seen by others across campus isn't given to them. So our database administrator sets up our actions according to that. So that's one thing, if you're doing this, you have to be able to do. Some things are more confidential that shouldn't be seen by others. And so we do have an action approach where if I put it in this one action type, it won't go to that. It won't be displayed elsewhere. So we utilize that. For example, the quick brief, the gift officer bullets, and my profile notes are all different things that can be added or taken out. We do set it up. We utilize and export into a Crystal report. And what's nice there is that we can set up a yes, no, like, do you want this to export yes or no, or we set up the export accordingly, and we can then look at it and then change it on the fly. There are times where I do have to hate to admit it, edit the PDF to make it work. And so we're trying not to do that anymore, especially with all the additions that have been added recently.
That seems like one of the pitfalls. There's pros and cons to both, right? But one of the pitfalls is that constant tweaking, or how do we get it to give us what we want in the format we want when we input it? That's hard.
It is the truth. It is hard.
So the profile notes that you put in, can you tell me a little bit more about those? I'm curious if it's the place where you have the flexibility to say more about perhaps how they've earned their wealth, or some things that you discover in the news, or how are you using it?
Well, how we utilize it is how our vice president at the time wanted us to set it up for. It has like a biographical details is one of our headers. And that we put in links that could respond to like their LinkedIn, their bio from their company, an about bio about their organization that they work for. It can handle a little bit more detail about the family structure if it's there to put in. One thing that the gift officers do in their bullet points, they have more of that data in their head because they meet with them, they know them better than me. And so that type of data is more so in the bullet point for the gift officer to put in, because they know the nuts and bolts, they know the family structure a little bit well. Then I just see a name. I can document a name and I can say a little bit about what they might be doing now, but I really possibly don't know because I don't have the time to go dig into the details for that. And we also do use not only the biographical, but I list out the association and boards that they work with. Currently, this is something for our new profile that we're going to have in the relationships tab that we can just export for a profile in future. We weren't ready for that back when we started the profile notes, so now that's a new change that we're going to be doing. I do list out any publications or if they had speaking engagements or anything of that nature, and any media mentions. So we put down all of the data for that and links to that if it's possible, and have that available. We do a lot with our own Grinnell College media. There's so much stuff that I look up an alum with Grinnell College and go, oh, we wrote an article about them 3 years ago. I did not know that. And so I can document that and say, look here for more detail.
So tell me a little bit, in your experience through this progression, you've had some iterations going on, there's staff turnover. What do you think the pros and cons are for your approach?
The pros and cons, I would say, with the constant fluctuation, is being nimble, being able to say, okay, what do you want? Can we do it? Is it possible now? Or is this something that's we wish we could have in future? And then being able to say no if we think it's something that we can't pull off at the moment. And I think another pro would be we are nimble and we are able to say, yes, we can make this happen. This is easy. And being able to be flexible in that regard, not saying, oh, this is how we've always done it, so therefore this is how we will do it. We aren't that type of operations team. We like to look forward to how we can make life easy for everybody, including ourselves. Another thing that I would say possibly is a con is the learning curve. Making these changes, people get frustrated. They might, for example, a gift officer may have only done this once or twice, and they're like, I don't understand this, Michelle. Could you walk me through it? And I think doing the training correctly and always taking a deep breath and knowing, hey, they don't do it enough, and that's fine. And so I'm just going to walk them through the process again and understand that that's the nature of it. And that's and I'm very comfortable in saying, oh, no problem. I'll take a step back and show you how to do this, kind of a thing.
Before I let you go, do you have any advice for someone who's looking to create a hybrid approach to profiles in their database? Like where should they get started?
I would say an analysis of what you have currently and talking to your senior leadership to see what they would like. Because if they don't want it, why do it? If they're not going to use it, there's no reason to put your time and effort into it. If they think they like what they have, that's fine. But what we did is we did a side-by-side analysis, as I said, and we said, hey, here's what we have. Would you like to change it up? And our president was all gung-ho for it. So that was great. I would say making some determinations. Can you do it? Is your database capable of turning on and off actions for others to see? So talking to your database administrator is a key thing. Talking to people that are your more technical related people who know the software. That could be a different person. For us, it's our data analytics person, and he's the one who creates all the crystal reports. He's like, yeah, this is feasible. I can make this happen in the time frame that we need. And having that, knowing if you need additional software, that might be something you might need to consider, and does your budget allow it? And I would say the last one would be, don't be afraid to break it and start over and then roll with it.
Great advice. Thank you so much for joining me today, Michele.
Thank you.
That was Michele Tanzosch, Assistant Director of Operations for Prospect Research at Grinnell College. Connect with Michele on LinkedIn or join her for the Prospect Research Institute's March 7, 2023 Masterclass on, you guessed it, database profiles, optimizing your research for the future. You can find all of our masterclasses at member.prospectresearchinstitute.org/MC-events. I hope to see you there. Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come check out the Prospect Research Institute's learning community. It's a membership community with powerful resources, great discussions, and comprehensive courses. Check it out at member.prospectresearchinstitute.org. I'd love to have you join me as a member of the learning community. See you there.